The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Chiefs and Colts are both under pressure as they head into this monumental game on Sunday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Last time the Colts and Chiefs played, I mean, the Colts won, but it was the most disastrous season I can ever recall in 2022. So good to be back with you guys in much better terms for the team.
So headed into this game, the Colts have pressure, but it's facing pressure from the top of the league, from the top of the AFC. A little bit different than the Chiefs situation, but I'll let you talk about the Colts pressure that they're dealing with right now, Jake.
Yeah, so kind of unexpectedly, the Colts have found themselves atop the AFC standings throughout most of the season. Now with their bye week, the Patriots and Broncos both caught up to them, and they're 9-2 as the Colts are 8-2. But still, the Colts have performed quite well early in the season as the Hunters and throughout the season as the Hunted. It really seems like they're getting a lot of teams' best efforts. Like you go back a few weeks to the Steelers, and their defense everyone was like, this is like the worst Steelers defense we've seen in years. And they totally flip a switch. Suddenly they can tackle again. Their pass rush is awesome. Like everything that had been plaguing them all season totally flipped, and they really just hit the Colts in the mouth. And then the Falcons a couple weeks ago out in Berlin, I mean, you never know what Falcons team you're getting, but they definitely gave them their best shot, ultimately in a Colts overtime win. So for the Colts, they're very coach speaky, led by Shane Steichen. It can fall on deaf ears to the outside, because Shane Steichen is very, we look at this day by day, week by week, but he's been consistent as ever in his third year now. And they finally got a good group in the locker room and in the coaching staff and everything, to where everyone's kind of marching in one direction. And they've really bought into his mantra of, we're taking things one day at a time. We're not looking ahead whatsoever. And, his consistency has just kind of helped them on all sides of the ball keep their eyes on the ultimate prize. And they don't get too high, don't get too low. And, I think us from the outside kind of pump things up for them more than they ever really look at it this way. Like, especially a matchup like this with the Chiefs. I mean, obviously, they're right there at like 500, but only people who you would probably qualify as haters are really downsizing the Chiefs right now. Like, I can promise you the Colts still very much see this as the Super Bowl dynasty Chiefs. They're not looking at this as a lowly Chiefs team that's on a down year.
Well, that's smart, especially if you're taking on the coach's mentality about that. That keeps you frosty. It keeps you from giving yourselves a letdown. And for the Chiefs, the opposite is true too. They got to make sure that they still believe they're the dynastic version of this team, because at this point, they've been too reluctant to do anything outside of what they've done in the past, which is mostly keep it together good enough so that Patrick Mahomes can do his thing, right? And even Patrick today would tell you, part of the problem is I'm just not hitting my targets. I am missing passes to guys that are open, and that's part of the problem. And so for the Colts to take that attitude, just take it 1 week at a time, the Chiefs need to do that as well. And I hope that they're able to get back to it. This has been, you can read the frustration on most of the players about the way that they go about things. Not necessarily in person, but certainly leaving the field, that kind of thing. Social media, all of a sudden, you don't hear a whole lot from most Chiefs most of the year, but now things are starting to come along. The pressure is building. And I think that pressure right now is mostly inopportune because of the season that the Colts have had. Now they're feeling the pressure that they put themselves in, where normally we'd be in a position that, hey, this could be a great battle. And if they lost to the Colts, it would still be all right. But now this could be something that really puts them on the edge of even making a playoff run. And that's, I think, what's really adding to the constant downheaval of pressure.
Yeah, I memean, when it comes to the Colts, I mean, they're kind of in uncharted territory a little bit. Like, you obviously want to go for the top seed. You get the first round bye, you get home field advantage, and everything, which they played much better at home. They're undefeated at home and everything. But if you're the Chiefs, yeah, it seems crazy to say, but like it feels like it could be a knockout punch. If they lose this game. I don't know what the rest of their schedule looks like, but they're in the AFC West. It's probably not a cakewalk by any means. So, yeah, for the Colts, you want to get back to the top and stay in the race with like a Patriots team that, like, don't get me wrong, the Colts schedule has been fluff through the first portion of the season, and they're making each opponent look exactly how they should. But they now have the second most difficult schedule in this back seven here. So, I mean, compared to the Patriots, like, it's going to be a race to the finish. And I mean, the Broncos too. The Colts have a win over the Broncos, but if they want to get that top seed, it's not going to be easy.
Game with the Colts and the Broncos early on in the season, and now you're in a situation where you hold the tiebreaker against them. But you're right, you have a tougher schedule than maybe the Broncos have. But it's kind of interesting because you look at how this season has played out for Kansas City. You look at how the season's played out for the Colts. Generally speaking, if you were to tell me early on in the season that you're going to be having an 8-2 team versus a 5-5 team, or a team with 2 losses versus a 5-5 team, I think you'd probably flip the teams. Yeah. That obviously hasn't been the way that this has worked out, and that is okay. Kansas City is under a ton of pressure to try to make the playoffs at this point, and a loss against the Colts puts them with 6 losses. I don't know that they can get to 7 and feel like they can actually make the playoffs. So that is a huge thing that they would have to overcome. But not only that, you're looking at another loss to an AFC team, which is going to hurt you when you're looking at seeding and looking at making the playoffs, because you're probably on the outside looking in at winning the AFC West this year. So it's all about what your common record is and what your AFC record is going to be. So this is a tough game. Kansas City has to go in. They have to try to win this one, and they have to get going in the right direction.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Aaron Rodgers returns to Soldier Field for what could be one last stand in the place against the team that he claims to own.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Chris, I imagine Steelers fans get a little tired of Aaron Rodgers' narratives and teams that he's facing, but this week, something a little bit fresh with the wrist injury, and we're not exactly sure if he's going to play or if he's not. I know Bears fans have had this game circled for a long time. What do we know right now, or is that very little?
It's still very little. The thing is, Aaron Rodgers absolutely does want to play. In fact, he wanted to go back in the game that he was knocked out of just this past weekend in the Bengals game. But the Steelers erred on the side of caution, and at the end of our press conference, he was asked, do you anticipate this being something that goes all the way to game time, or something that you decide that you figure out Thursday or Friday? And he says, I leave that up to Mr. Coach Tomlin. So it was funny the way he said it too. But he said his wrist feels better. It kind of described what happened, that he's just been doing a lot of rehab ever since. He kind of just fell down on his wrist when he was trying to brace himself as he was taking, he's hitting the ground after a hit. And he said it's not a pain issue. It's more of a safety issue, because it's the functionality. Mike Tomlin kind of hinted towards that when we talked to him on Tuesday, talking about it's the functionality of Aaron Rodgers that he wants to make sure of, that that the non-throwing wrist doesn't prohibit him from taking snaps, or protecting himself when he's on the field. So I think this is just a sense of right now he's going to keep rehabbing. He did not practice on Wednesday. We will see if he practices Thursday. I think the big day to watch is just Friday. Does he go through the walkthroughs on Fridays? If he does, then it's at least up in the air. If he doesn't, I imagine the Steelers will shut it down, declare him out, and it'll just be on Mason Rudolph Sunday.
Yeah, that would definitely be two very different matchups for the Chicago Bears. And I'm really interested about how this rivalry of sorts plays out on the field on Sunday in terms of like energy for the game, because Bears fans have a lot of energy for Aaron Rodgers. And we'll hear from Rodgers in a second here about his return energy for Bears fans here. But when you look at this Bears roster, like the last time Rodgers played the Chicago Bears was like back in 2022, and the Bears have turned over the vast majority of the team since then. Like you can count on, I think, one hand the number of players on this Bears roster that played Aaron Rodgers as a member of the Green Bay Packers. It's like tight end Cole Kmet, I think Jalen Johnson, if he comes off injured reserve and plays. I think Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon were rookies that season, the kicker Cairo Santos. But like it's not as though you have 53 Bears players who remember what it was like when Rodgers was beating up on them every single week. It's kind of more like a handful of guys, but you'll have 60,000 fans at Soldier Field who remember Aaron Rodgers beating them up every week. And I'm curious like how that translates. Like if even players who weren't here can like feel that and kind of take that on, or for a lot of them, it'll just be like, well, Steelers are a non-conference opponent, a good team, and you want to win every game. But like maybe this will end up feeling a little bit more like any other game, regardless of if Rodgers plays or not.
No, I think that's the thing here is that like Aaron Rodgers even acknowledges it's less about the team. It's more about the history of the rivalry, which he'll talk about in a second here. But, he acknowledged like it's one of the greatest rivalries of all time in sports, just Packers, Bears and their history of going at it. And he recognizes that a big part of it is the fans and the lore that they brought to it. And so, but it's funny when we talked about the Steelers-Packers game, he was like, I don't know anybody over there anymore. Like even the guys that he played with are mostly gone outside of like Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. And so he was kind of like, I don't have many gripes. The one team that he really was like happy to give his digs out to was the Jets, because he was literally just there last year. And there was obviously some stuff about how he was let go. But yeah, I don't think it's as much there's an animus for him. I do think we all know Aaron Rodgers got a bit of petty in him. He would love to have that be a cap on his career where he continues to just own the Bears. And so anytime he walks around Chicago, he can be like the boogeyman or whatever. But I think it's also cool that he pays a lot of homage to Chicago and the history of Chicago sports when we talked to him in the locker room in the Steelers locker room earlier on Wednesday.
Yeah, let's go to that clip now. This is courtesy of you. You stand, you can hear your voice. You stood there and recorded this clip and provided it so thanks from all the Bears fans. You get to hear Aaron Rodgers talk about this matchup, and I know your Steelers listeners are used to this. So here's Aaron Rodgers talking to the media about this rivalry and this matchup and what to expect on Sunday.
Is there added incentive for you for the opponent this week?
There's incentive for every opponent, but I have enjoyed many a Sunday and Monday and many Thursdays in that city. It's a great sports town, phenomenal sports fans, and great place to play.
Do you sort of thrive off being the villain there a little bit? Sort of enjoy that?
I'd rather not be. I mean, I'm not in Green Bay anymore. I feel like we can let bygones be bygones. Maybe I can, I guess. It's a great rivalry. I mean, in the history of all sports, you talk about the Lakers and the Celtics, and the Red Sox and the Yankees. You got to talk about the Packers and the Bears. And there's been some great memories there. When I first got to Green Bay, the Bears had the all-time series lead. When I left, Packers did. And since J. Love has taken over, it's even gotten better. But I hope those fans can put that behind them. I'm sure they can. Don't expect them to, but I really enjoy the city. They got great sports fans. I grew up watching WGN on my five channel TV back in the day, so I was a Cubs fan and a Bulls fan. how can I be a Bulls fan unless you don't like Michael Jordan? I did. I love them. So it was a lot of fun memories over the years playing there.
Their defense creates a lot of turnovers. What do they do especially that you have to watch out for?
Well, they're great around the football. They're knocking the ball out. They have a lot of vision in their defenses. They mix things up. They attack your protection schemes. Coach Allen's got them playing really well. And 22 turnovers is a big reason they're 7-3.
But, you know, even when Aaron Rodgers talks complimentary about the Chicago Bears, it still is like, screw you, man. Like, I don't want to hear it. You know, like, nobody in Chicago wants to hear all that stuff. I don't care if you're a Bulls fan or a Cubs fan or whatever, man. Like,
Get out of here.
Yeah. Like, even at the end there, right? He's very complimentary of Dennis Allen's defense and says the Bears defense is playing well. Like, they're not playing that well. Like, that's one of the big storylines. Is like they played a little better against JJ McCarthy and the Vikings last week because McCarthy put 17 passes in the dirt and his receivers dropped 6 more. But like, there's a big fear for Bears fans entering this game that like now you're playing playoff teams. Like first place Steelers, they got the Eagles after that, Packers after that. Like you're going from playing maybe a little bit of an easier schedule, and the wins still count even against bad teams. But now you're really going to get tested. And I know Rodgers hasn't been as sharp the last like game or so, but there's still a fear that like he's going to get this offense kind of jump started again with the Steelers in an easier matchup against potentially a still banged up Bears defense.
I mean, like you said, the Bears, they're dealing with injuries right now. And right now, like, the Steelers defense has some not great metrics, but so do the Bears. Like the Steelers defense right now is giving up the most passing yards per game. They're 28th in total yards per game. They're 13th in rushing yards. So they're holding up there. But the Bears, they're 26th in points, 27th in yards allowed, 30th in rushing yards allowed and yards per carry. But I look at that and I think that the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, he's smart enough. He still has the football IQ to adjust and to see what's going on. I think the thing that holds him up the most sometimes is he does not have the rapport with the Steelers playmakers on offense just yet. I think sometimes he has one with Jaylen Warren. Sometimes he has one with DK Metcalf. But like guys like Roman Wilson, where like, in the past, like Randall Cobb would be that guy. You're like, why? How does he just make plays like that? He doesn't have that kind of connection with a Roman Wilson. Like I even asked him later in that scrum because the play right before he came off, with an injury, he fired a pass to Roman Wilson in the red zone, and Wilson like ran his route a little too quick and not into the end zone in a red zone possession when it was third down and they needed to kick a field goal if they missed this. And he was just furious. He was just like, what are you doing? But like at the same time, he's been very complimentary of Roman Wilson, but he's trying to get that out of him. But he's been getting really close, man. Like there's times where he sees things, and when things click, you're like, man, you're seeing the connections start to build. And that's what the Bears should be wary of, is that if this offense starts to find rhythm, he is very good at pulling that out of guys like Darnell Washington. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the clips of him just running people over, but that's something that he said from the jump. He was like, I'm going to love throwing the ball to this guy. And now Darnell Washington is like leading the Steelers in tight end snaps over Pat Freiermuth, who's making like $11 million this year. So I think Aaron Rodgers, he's figuring some things out, and the Bears defense, it would help to get some guys healthy back. But I do think that's going to be something that Chicago fans could, if he plays, could end up being like, how is this guy still doing this?
We've got a Monday nighter with massive playoff implications.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Julian, I'm pumped for this one. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're talking about a lot of this stuff off the air, but I think the way that Bryce Young played last Sunday, I mean, tell me it wasn't the best game of his young career so far. That makes the intrigue ramp up even more for a game that has some massive playoff implications here with the 7-4 Niners and the 6-5 Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And my hope was that this was going to be the 7-4 Panthers versus the 7-4 49ers. But instead, Carolina, after having what looked to me to be a franchise-altering win in Green Bay, came back the next week and then lost to the Saints. But what's added intrigue to this game on Monday is the fact that Bryce Young went out there and threw for 448 yards, just a cool 84 more yards combined than he had the last 3 games prior to that, 2 more touchdowns than he had combined the last 3 games. Just an insane day. And if you actually look at EPA per play, it's not his best performance in a history of his career. You got to go back to the Green Bay game his rookie season. And then the last time they played in Atlanta, closed out the season last year in January as his 2 best EPA per play games. But the way I look at it, anytime you're setting a franchise record throwing for more yards than Cam Newton threw for, than Jake Delhomme threw for, and you're doing that on one leg, that's the best performance of your career by far, especially when all week long, everyone was asking me and everyone was talking about what's the deal here with the passing offense. Bryce looked so good in the second half of last season. And then so far this year, he can barely throw for over 100 yards. You have the win even against Green Bay, 102 yards passing, 124 in the loss against New Orleans. Like, what's going on here? And what do you know? Bryce goes out there, responds to all the criticism, and has by far, in my opinion, the best game he's had as a starting quarterback here in Carolina. And now we're all wondering, was it a fluke? Yeah. Or is this a sign of second half Bryce Young returning and starting in prime time on the road against San Francisco?
Right. Did the switch turn on? Because they tried to bench him, right? And then the other guy's hurt. Would he even be the starter if everybody was healthy right now? And the thing I really want to know is he looked like the point guard, right? He was making throws. Yeah. And you see this a lot with Kyle Shanahan's offense. They ask you to make throws over the middle of the field with anticipation, and in the intermediate, it wasn't like a laser show where he's throwing bombs all over the place, and he wasn't just checking the ball down and being super conservative either. He's making those throws that pocket quarterbacks have to make in the NFL over the intermediate part of the field. And I've coined the term aggressively intermediate for Kyle Shanahan's passing game. And I saw a lot of that style of quarterback play from Bryce Young. So what was bad about Bryce Young previously, and what changed last week?
I think a lot of it has to do with whether Dave Canales trusts him or not. Dave Canales, of course, the head coach in Carolina and the play caller. You go back to last season when Bryce was turning the ball over a ton, week 1, week 2, when he did get benched in favor of Andy Dalton. And the only reason he went back in at the point in the season that he did was because Andy had an injury to his thumb in a car accident. Dave Canales never revealed when he was going to go back to Bryce or if he was going to go to him. And even once Bryce got back in there, Dave was still pretty hesitant to go out there and say that, yeah, this is our guy moving forward. It took Bryce really gaining his trust. And then we saw in the second half of the season, he was allowed to take more downfield shots and look more that point guard, that Steph Curry. That was the comp that a lot of people made of Bryce's pre-draft process, which makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's interesting just knowing with San Francisco, of course, Steph being there with the 49ers, or for the Warriors, rather. Maybe he'll be at the game on Monday, depending on what their schedule's like this upcoming week. But that was always a comparison and the comp they were making for him. Same thing I'm saying there. But yeah, like, I think it comes down to just whether Dave trusts him. And you look at the first 2 weeks of this season, same kind of issues you saw coming out the gate last year. 5 turnovers, spotting the opponents 10 points each in the loss against Jacksonville and Arizona. And then once they were running the ball successfully with Rico Dowdle, it didn't seem like they wanted to put the ball in harm's way. But after what happened against New Orleans, where a 1-win Saints team came to your home and beat you and told you, if Bryce is not going to beat us, you're not going to beat us. Dave didn't really seem to have any choice but to let him cut it loose on Sunday. And we saw the best that we've ever seen out of Bryce. And again, on one leg.
This is the Steph Curry Bowl, right? This is the Carolina San Francisco connection. Did Carolina pass on Curry in the draft, or were they going to be up next if the Warriors didn't select him?
I can't even remember.
Okay. I feel like there was some way that Carolina just missed on drafting Steph Curry, because the Knicks, I think, were right in front or right after. I think Carolina's right before, right after the Warriors.
Listen, the Charlotte Hornets have made plenty of terrible draft decisions. I don't think not drafting Steph Curry was one of them. I'll just say that. Okay. Maybe it was. I can't remember each draft because they are typically in position to get players of Steph's caliber. And Steph went far later than, hindsight 2020, he should have gone. Now seeing how his career's played out. But yeah, let's not talk about the Hornets right now. We're talking about positive things here in Carolina right now.
Charlotte Hornets or Warriors. We won't talk about banners that have been hung because of that draft pick for the Golden State Warriors. And who knows? I don't know if they're off, but maybe Steph will be in the building for this one with the Panthers and the 49ers on Monday Night Football. The biggest storyline for the 49ers is also quarterback and getting their point guard back, getting Brock Purdy back. and how well he played in his return from his turf toe. And it's said that he's not 100% and probably won't be 100% for the rest of the year on that toe injury, but you couldn't tell, at least in this game, and he was still himself, and he was still navigating the 49ers offense and making big throws and making a ton of checks at the line of scrimmage, and really was vintage Brock Purdy in that game, and multiple touchdowns to Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, and it was all the usual suspects for the San Francisco 49ers. So that was a great sign for the Niners to get their guy back and see that offense hum against an inferior opponent, a banged up opponent that I know the Carolina Panthers saw earlier this year in the Arizona Cardinals. And so I think that's pretty important to have Brock Purdy not only back, but looking like himself, because the first time they tried to bring him back from his turf toe injury was against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was just a disaster. He didn't look right, and it was all off the whole game. And that was not the case against the Arizona Cardinals in week 11. So that's a huge factor for the 49ers to have the Brock Purdy that they know and love at the helm and operating that 49ers offense in week 12 on Monday Night Football against the Carolina Panthers. The one of the interesting things with these two teams and the way they're playing right now is that I'm not sure how good either team is, because all the injuries for the 49ers, and they've kind of like gone back and forth. Will have a big win, then they have a loss, and it's like, oh man, maybe the losses are, maybe those injuries are just too much. And the next game, it's like, no, they won, they're good, they can go, they can battle through this. And then for the Carolina Panthers, I'm looking at, you sweep the Falcons, right? It was a shutout and an overtime win, but that's not as impressive as you thought beginning of the year, because the Falcons kind of look terrible all of a sudden, right? And so I'm really not even that sure after 11 weeks of this season what exact teams we're going to see out there on the field, and how good the Carolina Panthers quarterback's actually going to play if he can follow up that performance from last week. So and that's to learn about these teams a little more.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the Panthers, because if Bryce can, I mean, he's not going to throw 400 yards again, I don't think, on Monday. Maybe he's finally
set a record for completions in a regular season game against the 49ers defense last week. So they can be had right now with how how injured they are. Their two best players on defense are out, and I think we got to talk about some of those key matchups here in a little bit. But with that unit, I think a lot of it was game script, because it was an opening kickoff for 98 yards, and all of a sudden, you're down and you're throwing a lot when you're the Arizona Cardinals, and you can't really run the ball a lot. So that's why they threw it 57 times, but still completed 47 of those 57 passes, right? And for 400 and something yards. So that's something that I'm interested in seeing in this Robert Saleh defense when a game is closer and you don't have that luxury with the scoreboard, and you can play soft and just kind of bend, don't break, what that'll look like, especially if someone is playing at a high level on the other side of quarterback.
Yeah, and we'll see. There is a relationship that Robert Saleh and that Dave Canales has. I forget where it dates back to. I know last year when Saleh was still with the Jets, they came down to Carolina for joint practice ahead of their week 2 preseason game. So that'll be kind of an interesting matchup to see how those two obviously know each other pretty well, how they go back and forth against each other on Monday night in that game. So yeah, we'll see if Bryce can put up the same kind of numbers. I would not bank on that happening, but also I have no idea what to expect at this point in time heading in this game on Monday. But Carolina certainly is a far improved team from where they were a year ago. Just how many more games will they win than they won last year? They've already won one more. They've got to 6 after only winning 5, but a tough remaining schedule starting on Monday against San Francisco. So we'll see how they're able to finish off the season, where they still are very firmly in the playoff hunt.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Arizona went into Storrs, Connecticut, and claimed the best win of the college basketball season and the #1 ranking along with it.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Arizona 71, UConn 67 from Gamble Pavilion in Storrs, Connecticut. Arizona won with physically overwhelming UConn and a defense that is suffocating. And that bodes even better than any other way that could have happened for Arizona to win, because we all know how good Arizona is on offense and how good they can be on offense, because I don't think they're close to their ceiling there. I'm going to start this off with a quote from the opposing coach, a notoriously temperamental, but in this case, a good-spirited after a loss, Danny Hurley. He said, plain and simply, we got punked. It's going to be a bad film session coming out of here. There was a street fight going on in the paint. You can't stand on the outside when your buddies are in the fight. And that is the other side of the coin. Arizona dominated on the paint. And they had the bigger bodies. They had a concerted effort of dominating the paint, because Terrace Reed, in my opinion, UConn's best player. In my opinion, their most important player, because he allows them to have a kind of balanced attack, not in terms of scoring, but in terms of they can play inside-outside ball through Terrace Reed. He was out, and as soon as that happened, I thought Arizona should dominate the glass and just needs to run solo ball off the line. I've tweeted that out. Arizona was plus 20 on the glass. They had 42 points in the paint, were able to get 13 offensive rebounds and 16 second chance points. That is a level of dominance on the interior that will win you ball games. And it is particularly impactful that they were able to do so against a team lacking their starting center. That said, Eric Ribo is really good as their backup center. They have a two-headed monster up front like they have had the last couple of years. Additionally, Arizona was able to win this game without what I'd call a very good offensive performance altogether. Arizona was the better team and generated better shots all night, but left a lot hanging. I think I'm going to start with the negative here before working to the positive, because they work hand in hand. Arizona was up 35-33 at half and was the better team by far. To only be up by 2 was a travesty, because they got solo ball, Alex Karaman, Eric Riba, and Silas Demery, the 4 best players for the Huskies tonight, with 2 fouls, with 4 minutes to go in the first half. And they did not make any headway to make this game more in favor of Arizona. Instead, Arizona kind of played it to a stalemate, played complacently, in my opinion. Did not push that lead. I thought, oh man, they might regret that. And then they came out in the second half and played super aggressively and got to the rim and scored 14 of the first 18 points of the second half from inside the paint. And that is where their bread is buttered. I've said this 1,000 times. Arizona's going to have a repeatable and excellent offense, because where they score is easy shots. Even if they have a bad day shooting, which in my opinion they did today, both from 3 and from 2, they were still able to generate great looks because their offense is sustainable. Now, the other thing, without burying the lead, is Arizona's best 2 players, Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley, played like All-Americans. And when you go on the road and you play a team as well coached and as talented as UConn, you need to have your dudes play like dudes, and you ideally hope for the supporting cast to play well. But you need the dudes to play like dudes, and they did. They combined for 37 points. Koa Pete had 16 points, 12 rebounds, and I think he could have done even more. I think he was at times timid. He should have been more aggressive, because he was great in this game. And Jaden Bradley, at the end of the game, hit a big jump shot when the momentum was on the side of the Huskies. And at the very end, that up fake, up and under pirouette was beautiful to score and beat the buzzer and put Arizona up by 3. And shout out Tobe Awaka for finishing the game with free throws. But let's go back to the defense. And now this is the best, the positive. I said the negative was Arizona was leading by 2 at half. Well, that's a great thing, because I talked about how UConn's a really good front-running team. And on a true road game, you do not want to fall behind. That was one of the keys I gave. We'll discuss all the keys and how they went coming up next. But let's talk about the identity for Arizona. Arizona under Tommy Lloyd has been top 10, or I guess top 11, 3 of the 4 years offensively. All 4 years they've been top 11. 3 of the 4 years they've been top 10 offensively under Tommy Lloyd. They've played quickly many of the years. This year haven't had to, and they've still been productive offensively. But what won them this game, what won the game against UCLA, is fantastic interior defense and a true emerging star on one side of the ball that is getting better on the other. Mo Krivas, you can make the argument that even with Jaden Bradley and Koa Pete playing like All-Americans, you can make the argument the best player on the court today was Mo Krivas. Mo Krivas changed everything for UConn. UConn was shooting mid-range jump shots, which they very rarely do. They're a very analytically oriented team that shoots threes or layups. Well, Terrace Reed was out. They wouldn't get as many layups anyway because Arizona didn't need to double. But Arizona won a game against UCLA by playing switching defense at the end of the game and disrupting their offense by making them stagnant by switching. Against UConn, it's the exact opposite. They played a deep drop coverage, dared Eric Ryba to shoot. He actually hit a couple of them and played very well. But Mo Krivas controlled the paint, loomed large defensively, altered the shots and shot chart. And I've said that numerous times. But Arizona's a top 10 defense in this sport, and they will be a top 10 offense. And that makes them a true national championship contender. Like, that's the plain and simple point to make. If Arizona's winning games with their defense and their offense is only going to get better, watch out, world. And they punked UConn on the glass. Krivas had 14 boards. 14 boards. Between he, Koa Pete, and Tobe Awaka, they had 33 rebounds, which is 10 greater than UConn had as a whole. This is a dominant front court. They out-rebounded Florida, who was plus 40 against North Florida on the glass. This is a team that's really, really good and understands what they do well and are only going to get better. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, too, and how much growth there is, because I think for the team that should be the number one team in the country, after beating UConn at UConn, after beating UCLA in Inglewood, and after beating the defending champions on opening night, all three of which Arizona was favored to lose prior to the season. They were expected to lose by 5 against Florida. They were expected to lose by 4.5 against UCLA. By the time the game happened, Arizona was favored by 1. And then they were expected to lose by 6.5 in this one. And then Terrace Reed news was out and then dropped to 4.5. But anyway, all three of these teams were ahead. Number 3, Florida. Number 4, UConn. Number 12, UCLA, ranked all ahead in the first AP poll above Arizona. That was 13. Arizona's by far got the best resume in college basketball. They already did before this win, and now have the best individual win of the entire season, having beaten UConn at UConn. Arizona's number one team in the country, have tons of room to continue to grow because a lot of their pieces that we thought would be vital have not performed well yet. And I don't think UConn played well offensively in 2 of their big 3 wins.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
The New York Knicks try to lose in Dallas, but the Mavericks just wouldn't let them.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
One of those games you win and you walk away a little disgusted with yourself for being up at nearly 1 a.m. on the East Coast. Happy with the win. Gross with how the Knicks played. A little gross that you stayed up that late to watch it if you weren't paid to do so. But we're going to talk about Landry Shamet's late shot making, Jalen Brunson's return, and whether the Knicks were just better to be lucky than good. They become the first team in NBA history in this game to win a game where they missed 33s and 15 free throws in regulation. Incredible. Is that your main takeaway from this one?
Incredible. I don't think is the right word, and I'll be a stickler on it.
Okay,
yeah.
to be fair, it was a sarcastic.
No, I know. What I'm saying is, it was better than I think you even maybe think. It was incredible, unbelievable, like to the literal letter of the law. It has to be unbelievable to be incredible. It's incredible. I kind of did believe it. I was like, you know what? The Mavericks are missing everyone, and the Knicks are missing not everyone, but they are a little scattered right now. They're a little scrambled. This game is probably going to be one of those. And, they referenced it on the broadcast. That game with Luka and the last second shenanigans.
That was 1 in 14,000. This is also first time ever. I would imagine the number's not that high, but just crazy things happen when the Knicks are in Dallas.
This is a trend at this point. This is a trend at this point, and my dog just caused an earthquake. But like, basically, the Knicks are gonna have a weird game when they go to when they go to Dallas. It's part of the course at this point. Also, even if it's at the Garden, Dallas is like involved sometimes in their weirdest. If you remember the game where Cam Reddish crossed himself up and hit the deck, and then like
I've blocked out the whole Cam Reddish era.
the rotation changed like forever after the Knicks lost the third quarter that day 41-16. So like it's always weird with the Mavericks. Last night's game, what did I think about it? There were parts of me that were watching the game and thinking, this is a bad early data point. This is a team, every game, a team shows you who they are. And right now, the Knicks are showing you that in Dallas, post Nico firing in a super transitory time for a team that is missing its two best players, the number one overall pick. You took their two best doctors last year. Everything's a mess. And and they traded Luka, and then you still can barely beat. It's like, guys, come on. Also, it's tough to look at it that like in a vacuum. Jalen Brunson first game back. We'll get into what he looked like, which was an alien for various reasons. But I think for me personally, and I'm kind of curious, like what you were thinking as you were watching the first half unfold was just like, and again, this is not from a position of like, oh, I despise watching. Like I watch so many basketball games that people would consider awful, and I have a great time. But I'm watching the start of this game, and I was like, this is different. But that's the point here. Like the Knicks are going to lose games that maybe they shouldn't by a couple of points or by 30 but they're also going to, when they win by 3 times as many points. Like that might not seem like a worthwhile trade-off to you, the listener, individually, but it's what teams across the league are doing right now. And I guess I don't know why specifically, other than data is clearly indicating that they should, but I also hate referring to analytics as like this like god that doesn't have a anyway. What do you think? Do you think that this is just where we're at, that trash nights in the NBA are going to not turn out like the NFL, because there's so much more variance? It's not like everything's going to be close, but do you think that as teams, here's my actual question.
Sure, yeah.
Do you think that as teams continue to adopt slightly more similar shot profiles and also just similar ideologies regarding 3-point volume, and particularly like dealing with the talent disparity, getting up a lot of threes, high difficulty shots, and just hoping they go in, do you think that that's almost like leveling the playing field around the league in a sense? Like styles make fights, and now everyone's style is a little slightly more similar, to the extent where we're going to see more and more games like this where teams just like that very opposite of have a barn burner, but it's still like down to the, I don't know. What do you make?
Yeah,
a trend?
I think the like counter to, like, I guess, I mean, maybe you're not asking that question with an implicit answer, but the counter I would say is like defense is the control variable. And it's why you see Oklahoma City still have like a plus 15 net rating, and the Knicks don't have that. They are, I think, 16th rating as of this morning. I believe I saw a stat the other day that the Knicks have gotten the best shot quality in the NBA while allowing the worst shot quality in the NBA. So if anything, their offense is still underperforming a little bit, as you see tonight, and their defense is maybe overperforming, though there's something to like certainly the defensive playmaking you're seeing from Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, and like the Knicks being a little bit more like risk-taking defensively when they were very risk-averse under Tom Thibodeau is maybe like that's a trade-off for them defensively now, where like higher shot quality for the opponents, nights where like you don't get those steals and they get hot and they pour 130 on you, but you create a little bit more variance, you help your offense, you create easy shots, you shut down possessions because you're getting steals where an opponent doesn't even get off a shot. So it's interesting. I don't want to overlook into that stat. I think the Knicks defensive rating being pretty much dead average is probably mostly indicative of where they are. I don't, despite
do you think they've been an average defense, or do you think they've sometimes been good and sometimes been so bad and it's averaged out to average? Because I think both are feasible.
I think the latter, but I do think that's pretty typical for an average defense. I may be wrong. Maybe some teams just kind of play mediocre all the time. But
I was going to say, I think it's fair to say they have an average defense, but it's a volatile.
For sure. I definitely hear it. And obviously it's far more volatile when OG Anunoby's completely off the floor for when he's injured, I should say. He's that's the way to say that.
What's the weirdest way I could say this?
Yeah. I mean, he, as of 2 weeks ago, I didn't check when he got hurt, but as of 2 weeks ago, I think he had the single best defensive plus minus in the NBA. So like the Knicks, in some sense of the term, are losing the league's single most impactful defender. You lose that, and you have a night where we said like this was an unprecedented way in NBA history. And to be fair, like teams have only been shooting enough threes to miss 30 of them, maybe the last 10 to 15 years. So that limits your scope. But this was an unprecedented way to win a basketball game. 12 for 42, 19 for 35 from the free throw line. So I was being a little condescending and a little tongue in cheek to start. But I do think there's some merit to the idea that like this is a noble win and this is an impressive win. And we can talk about like in the next two segments, like why that's maybe not quite the truth, because I didn't think this was an exceptionally sharp game for pretty much anyone on this team other than probably Jalen on the offensive side of the floor. Like I think pretty much everyone else had their warts. Josh in some ways had a good game, but even he had some issues passing up wide open threes. And to your point, they're playing a just like terrible version of Dallas, who put together a gutty effort. D'Lo was awesome. Najee Marshall was awesome. Dallas started off really hot, finished 36% from three, 25 and 30 from the free throw line. Like at some point, math is just math, and that is an incredibly hard like shooting margin and shooting gap to make up, even when the Knicks are way better. So to me, like I don't have any really like negative long-term read about this game, other than the fact that like in a perfect world, and like if the Knicks are going to beat a team like the Thunder, you'd think their defense would have to be somewhat close to them, and that's hard to judge without OG. But right now, they're not in that stratosphere. Chris.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
The Chicago Bulls win in dramatic fashion.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast.
I am stressed. I am hype. I am losing my mind. I can't believe what we just saw in this 122-121 win over the Bulls. To me, let's start off with the finish and work our way back. I thought that Billy Donovan called a heck of a play to finish out the game. I thought that the Chicago Bulls did a great job creating in this game. I thought that they truly found opportunities offensively for most of the game where they needed to. I thought there were some really good out of bounds plays, and that to finish the game off, finding Vooch wide open to get the dub. Great shot. And Vooch coming through in the clutch is something that you can't hang your hat on, but am I going to sit here and say that it's not something that I appreciated in a great way? No, I'm not. I thought that it was a phenomenal performance to finish the game by Nikola Vucevic, and I was very excited by it. Outside of that, though, there's a lot of problems that I do have with this game. And the biggest one being you got out rebounded 64-38. Is this a game the Bulls should have lost 100%? Did a game they did? No. And sometimes that's going to happen in an NBA season. And where we're at right now, that's okay. It is not the end of the year. It's not the finish to a season. It is not. There's a lot of basketball left here to play. And so I'm okay saying, you know what? This is a game the Bulls shouldn't have won, but they found a way to do that. They found a way to do so. They found a way to put themselves in a position to stay in this game. There's a lot of question marks that I have on how the Bulls played tonight, but at a minimum, and the biggest thing about this is, to me, am I going to sit here and say that Billy Donovan called the best game? No, like you leave here with challenges in your pocket. You leave here with timeouts in your pocket. Like, what are we doing? But when it came down to it, you found a way to put yourself over the top. And you know what? That's something that early on in the season, I am okay with. Now the Bulls sit at 8-6 with a very favorable schedule moving forward. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for this team, finding ways to continue to attack this schedule. This is a game that I felt like the Bulls would win, but I did feel like it would be very close in this manner. And now when you talk about some of the things that you saw, I think, listen, if you're a Bulls fan right now and you see how Kobe White is playing, he was 5 for 17 in the game, 52% from the field, 55% from the three-point line. Most of his shots came from the free throw line, the three-point line. He got to the free throw line multiple times. And to me, I thought that there was a very skewed decision on how some of these foul calls were going to be made here in this game. And so you didn't see the Bulls get to the line nearly enough in this game. But I did think that there was a lot of opportunity for this Bulls team to take over and to win this game. I mean, at one point you led by 21. You led by 21. And so it does suck how this game went down in the fourth quarter. But to me, the biggest finish that you have to take from this is you've got a team that's finding a way to be clutch in some of these clutch moments. Not all of these clutch moments. We know there have been some really big misses from this Bulls team overall. But in some of these clutch moments, you're finding a team that is finding ways to make some of these tough shots. And that's the biggest thing that you can ask for. And I'll be honest with you, this was not a good day for the Bulls overall. And when you can come through and find ways to win these games, these are the ones where you say, okay, you won that one. You put that one in the bag. Now, how do you go out there and you beat the Pacers? How do you go out there and you beat Orlando again? How do you go out there and find ways to beat these playoff teams that you have beaten yet again? I know a lot of people are going to look at this game and say, oh, my God, I can't believe that the Bulls were ever down in this game. I can't believe that they lost this game. I'm not almost lost this game. I can't believe that they put themselves in a position where the Portland Trailblazers could have beaten them. But if you're saying that, you haven't watched this Portland team. This Portland team is incredibly talented. This Portland team, Denny Avdia is another name in the, I mean, how many players are we saying now that are in that P-Will draft that is completely surpassed Patrick Williams? Like, to me, the fact that you were able to pull this game out on a, I keep saying this. I said this when I was doing the live call on a Portland team that, I'm not going to lie to you, with every game they continue to play like this, they indict Chauncey Billups just a little bit more, not crazy, but just a little bit more. To me, these are the games that you have to find ways to win. And the Bulls outplayed Portland in a ton of ways. I mean, the biggest thing that really set you behind was second chance points and offensive rebounds. The Bulls got out rebounded today 26-7 on the offensive glass. They got out rebounded in totality 64-38 in total. Like, there's a ton of mistakes that this Bulls team made, and yet you're talking about them coming away with a win. That is something massive. That is something big. And am I going to sit here and say that you can build your season off of that? No. But sometimes that's how you got to win games in this NBA. Let's not sit here and pretend like we haven't watched this Bulls team win games like this before. Let's not pretend that we haven't watched championship Bulls teams win games like this before. The Bulls found a way to pull this one out, and I'm not going to begrudge it. Does that mean that I feel great about this game? No. As you see, the second topic is a pat ring. And maybe this whole show is a pat ring. But right now, what I love, 11 for 19 from Nikola Vucevic. And what I will say is this, a big shot to finish the game, but I thought Vuce gave you a lot throughout the entire game. There's a lot of people that are going to say, well, Vuce couldn't out-rebound Donovan Clingan. Well, you know what? That goes into the rant. Give me a second. I'll get there. But overall, the fact that Nikola Vucevic had this bounce-back game, 11 for 19, 5 for 9 from the three-point line, shot 55% from the three. To me, that is a very different conversation that you've talked about with a guy like Nikola Vucevic over the last couple of games. I mean, throughout this losing streak, you have looked at him and said, he is a player that has helped you lose games. Me and Hayes have talked about it on this show. He's somebody that has helped you lose games more times than he has helped you win games. So the fact that you saw this bounce back effort versus a guy like Donovan Clingan, who balled out tonight, 7 for 13. He had 17 points. He had 21 rebounds. Again, give me a second to get to the rant. I'm glad that this is a solo episode. I truly am. Because there's a lot of anger in me today. And yet again, another game where the Bulls had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players go into double digits. Need to see a little bit more from some of them. Matas Buzelis, bad. What words y'all want to? What would you like me to use? Let me Google something real quick. Let me see how to say bad in different languages. Let's see. In Arabic, I believe it is say. In Chinese, it is buhao. In Danish, it is darling. In Dutch, schlecht. In Finnish, huno. In French, malvis. Maybe malveus. In German, schlecht. In Greek, I got nothing for that one. In Italian, cadavillo. In Norwegian, darlig. What language you want me to put it in? Matas Buzelis is playing terrible right now. In Japanese, waru. What language do you want me to say it in? Everybody, if you speak a different language, comment in the comments right now. That's how Matas Buzelis is playing. Like, wake up. And I said this during the live call. You want to show off the bag work. But you don't want to go out there and show off the day-to-day fundamentals that made you a good player last year. Shout out to you for getting some bag work.